this particular experience I had was far deeper, and I felt deeply, calmly present. And I felt the presence of a greater reality. I felt the presence of God, not as some, where the clouds open and the angels descend and God appears in golden light, but just, I knew without knowing how I knew that I was experiencing the sacredness of the divine presence. And in that, I felt the best I had ever felt in my entire life. I felt loving, I felt kind, I felt calm. And everybody who I came in contact with was obviously experiencing that from me as well. So it was, it wasn't like sensational headline writing, but it was life-changing.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had discovered something that was the deeper me, the me I always wanted to be and feel and become and express. So this very much increased my interest in pursuing a spiritual life. And it flipped my major in college from molecular biology to, at that time, Greek philosophy, Greek studies, in a sense, Western philosophy. And I later transferred to UC Berkeley, where I studied more of Indian philosophy. And along this process, I began meditating. I began being drawn to the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, who's the author of the Autobiography of a Yogi, who, has millions of people have read that book and been changed by it. And it changed my life, set me on a path that I'm still on today. And I'm living in a spiritual community called Ananda. But all my life, really, I had these two sides, which I loved science. I loved the precision, the exactitude of the scientific approach. And I loved the inner experience that science can only suggest, but not give you. So those are both sides of me, and I've continued to be sort of a hybrid of those two to this day.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing I love. I think it's really important nowadays too, as well, to have a person like yourself bridge that gap between the spiritual and the scientific world, because so many people, they're all in spiritually, or they're all in kind of this scientific materialistic kind of reductionist type idea where they're just living these kind of separate dualities almost. And it's nice for people who want to explore spirituality, but they just can't wrap their head around. Sometimes they get that whole woo-woo thing. It's like, oh, this is too woo-woo for me. I can't grasp this. This is not me. Like yoga, meditation.
I can't go there.
Yeah, I can't go there. Yeah, they get this kind of block already up. But if you put them in a scientific way and you kind of explain to them, okay, this is what's kind of going on, then there's that little light bulb that kind of goes, oh, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, okay, I could see that. And it really changes their perspective. So I really appreciate you kind of spending your lifetime, really kind of bridging those two gaps, especially with this, your second book, The Physics of God.
Probably scientists who have, a string of initials after their name would not consider me a scientist, because I never actually got a degree in science or had a career in science in the normal sense of the word. But I think it's important for people to understand that even the scientists who do have a string of initials after their name only understand, typically in depth, one area of specialization of science. And in everything else that they might also understand and know about, they are lay scientists. So what I like to say is I'm a lay scientist everywhere. I have no specific scientific depth of knowledge in one field, but I do have a broad and deep understanding of how all the different aspects of science connect to each other in a way that in some cases, many cases, scientists themselves don't have.
Yeah, I mean, your understanding of it is it's very, I hate to simplify, but it seems very simplistic. When you read it, it doesn't go like way over your head, which is really fantastic, because sometimes, you know, if you get too clinical, too scientific, you kind of lose people. And it's always a nice balance of an approach. When you have that broader
Right.
aspect, you can combine the different things to make it seem more digestible, I guess. So you're not reading, it's not like going to college and reading a science textbook when you're going, oh, I just want to fall asleep. You know, it's really, really brilliant how you do that. Yeah. Now, one of the things you talk about, you know, is understanding about consciousness is through physics, which I always find just fascinating. And I mean, I'm an idiot when it comes to physics. I'd be honest with you. I mean, I know a little bit, and it's only because of people like yourself that I know anything really about quantum physics and all that stuff. But maybe just for people who are listening, maybe can you maybe touch on that a bit, maybe help them understand why physics is part of this understanding of consciousness?
Well, in the deepest theories of physics, the early pioneers of the emerging relativity theory, quantum physics, later string theory, which is kind of an extension of quantum physics. The early pioneers in those fields were really wondering, what was beyond, what could possibly support these discoveries they were making, which generally are referred to as quantum weirdness, right? And one of the key discoveries they made is what's known as the observer effect.
Okay.
And the observer effect is difficult to explain quickly, but essentially what experimentation by quantum physicists revealed was that matter has this duality, that it can behave like a wave and it can behave like a particle. So it can behave as if it's energy, which underneath the surface, matter is energy, but it can actually behave like energy altogether, or it can behave like a particle. It can behave like what we in our everyday lives experience. But the fascinating thing that they discovered is that matter only behaves like a particle, like the matter that we are familiar with, in the presence of an observer, an intelligent observer.
Wow.
So this confounds the mind. I tell my friends this and they say, do you mean when I'm not in my room disappears and turns into just a bunch of energy? And the answer is yes. And so, of course, they try to run into the room quickly and catch it before it turns into matter and things like that. Because it seems so counterintuitive that
Yeah, of course.
the physical world that we know so well, we touch and we feel and we smell and we see, can go in and out of these two different realities depending on whether there's somebody there to be observing it.